One. Welcome back, everyone, to WoW Killer. I am Garrett Weinzerl here with Taliesin, no last name given.
I'm Taliesin. That's me. Hello.
Taliesin,
welcome to WoW Killer, Garrett.
Of Avatel, I think, was a joke you made one time when we realized that was a bad thing to call you. It just sounds weird, and I don't know why I'm bringing it up again.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you brought up that thing that we said we'd never talk about again because it didn't work first time.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah. Dude,
is that going to be a sign of how this show goes? Probably for all time. It's how it's gone so far. Oh, we're off to a flyer already. This is going to be a classic. I can tell. Except it's not. We're not talking about classic. Oh, no.
I mean, we might.
Where are we? I don't know. What's the topic for today, Garrett? What are we talking about
today's
on
topic,
a single topic WoW podcast that we always stick to the topic and never discuss anything else? Is it classic or what is it?
We could definitely dip into classic because classic is, just a re-release of the original beginning of World of Warcraft. And we may visit that today in this discussion.
Do you know what classic is? And you're not going to like this. Classic is like, in the Rise of Skywalker, right?
Oh, how deep down this rabbit hole? Do we have to give a spoiler warning?
You know when Kylo Ren is like, he's got the thing and he's put it in his machine and he's flown to the place and like Emperor Palpatine is there being all camp.
Okay, this is like the first 5 minutes, and if you haven't seen the movie and you're like, this seems like a spoiler,
you've got like the other Snokes. You got the other Snokes.
You've got the Snickles. It's because it's Snoke pickles. They're Snickles.
Yeah, that's classic.
Well, but you missed. I missed the part where Kylo Ren interfaces with the Snoke pickles, and it's like, oh man, I remember how good this was. Oh yeah,
but like it all gets destroyed before it gets a chance to become classic. But what I'm saying is, like, Snoke was original WoW, and now he's dead, just like retail WoW, and like the reproduction Snoke, that's classic.
Okay.
Exactly the same as original WoW, but like it was.
You're talking about you were talking about a sign at the beginning of the show, and I got a sign regarding the show, which is I was traveling last week, so we couldn't do this, and I missed the show, man. It became like a regular thing in my week. I'm like,
really? Did you get an ache?
I a little bit. I got the WoW killer ache. I miss doing the show, and I'm glad we're back.
That's funny because I get a WoW killer ache as well, but it's when we're doing WoW killer.
Well, I guess this is a very one-sided relationship.
I've got it right now. It's quite intense today, actually.
It's coming in. Well, Taliesin, for the topic of today's podcast, you and I will be discussing who we think are the best and worst characters in World of Warcraft. And these, you may think to yourself, oh, I get this. They're going to like debate Illidan versus Tyrande and go from there. And you're right.
And we will.
We will. Well, maybe not that one specifically, but
well, hang on. Illidan versus Tyrande. That's a matchup I would like to see. In a ring, no weapons, no shirt, no belt.
I mean, they would just start making out.
You reckon?
Yes.
I think that's what Illidan would be planning for, but I think Tyrande would kick his ass.
Illidan is way too melodramatic to assume that they would start making out. That's why that would be the outcome. Illidan would go in. Yeah.
Interesting that you're doubting Tyrande's much oft-stated love for her man.
Well, she chose poorly. Way. She chose the wrong brother. Just to start this off with a hot take. But yeah. Anyway, you may think we're only sticking to the main characters. Oh no, we're going deeper than that. But let's start there. Taliesin, for kind of main big block Warcraft characters.
Yeah, and I want to give an impression of like where we're going on this episode as well, because when we came up with this idea about 10 minutes ago for what the subject of this episode was going to be, I came up with this idea and I thought to myself, well, that's a really lazy, stupid idea. But then I thought about it and I was like, no, actually, it's cool because obviously we're going to talk about the big characters as well. What I would call S tier, A tier kind of lore characters. Your Thralls, your Alerias, your Anduins, your people like that. But also, you got those expansion-specific characters that just crop up here and there. And also, characters in WoW from, like, third-party literature. Maybe they only appear in books or something like that. And then you've got like the vast array of like pop culture characters and references that are added into the game as well as like little jokes. And we're going to touch on those as well. And then there is, of course, the most important characters of all, the player characters that we as players create and play ourselves. It'd be nice to kind of tell some old stories about, you know, our own experiences in the game too. And we will, because for every positive, there must be a negative to balance it out. We'll be discussing our favorite and least favorite examples of all of these things. So There you go.
Yes.
I thought that was important.
And so would you like to kick off with who you think is the best main character, or would you like me to go?
You can go. I've said too much rubbish this episode already. I need to rest and build up my rubbish quota again.
Well, this is what I'm going to do. I bet you know. Who do you think the best character is?
Can we put some money on this?
No, because I don't think any money would exchange hands.
I might be wrong, Garrett, but I'm going to take a guess. I'm going to take a wild guess. And if I am wrong, we have to cancel this podcast because we clearly aren't on the same wavelength. I'm going to guess it's Sylvanas. Am I right?
Oh, shit. Okay, no, you're wrong.
Am I?
Yes. Really? You think my favorite character is Sylvanas?
Yes.
No, she used to be like my second favorite because of her connection to my favorite character, which is Arthas. Come on, Taliesin.
Oh, Arthas. Oh, okay. All right. Well, okay, fine. Arthas. Tell me about your love for Arthas, Garrett. Oh, please tell me why you love him so much.
It's pretty well documented, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. But yeah, I mean, if we're going with like,
you say you don't want to go too deep into it, but it is like the entire topic of this show, Garrett. So I mean,
yes,
it's up to you.
There's many more categories to get through, so I'm okay leaving this to you. All knew the answer to this, except for Taliesin, apparently. So. Yeah, I mean, this could arguably go under expansion specific, but you know, Arthas casts a long shadow, so. Yeah, I mean, I mean, if we're talking, but you could make an argument though. Are we talking strictly World of Warcraft characters? Because Arthas is more interesting in his outside of World of Warcraft.
I think in the case of Arthas, because of the long shadow that he casts, I think it's fair to kind of take in all of his story.
Yeah. I mean,
absolutely, and also. In recent cinematics in Battle for Azeroth, it did actually literally go back to Warcraft 3 stuff with Arthas there and portray it in WoW. So there's an argument that it has been in WoW and is therefore specific to a WoW conversation.
It's like my only gasp moment in Battle for Azeroth is when Arthas showed up.
Yeah, a lot of people would say the same.
Literally,
but imagine Garrett, that, you know, someone's listening to this show and, you know, they've never heard you wax lyrical about Arthas before or know anything about your history. Maybe they just saw the thumbnail and said, wow, that guy's hair looks amazing. I'm going to click on that. Or maybe they're listening to the show because, you know, as I imagine, probably about 100% of the people listening to this show they just love Taliesin so much. And they're like, who's this Garrett guy? I've never heard him before. What? I don't know anything about him. I hope he tells me about who is Arthas even. I don't understand who Arthas is or why Garrett loves him so much. If Garrett is his name, I can't remember because I'm only here because I love Taliesin so much.
Oh God, this would be hilarious if that wasn't so extremely accurate.
No, it's only funny because it's not. Please.
Oh yeah. Well, for me, I mean, so much of it is tied up in deep raw emotion of me being a giant nerd because I didn't realize you could tell a story like that in a game. Like, period. Definitely not an RTS. I think I did. I played the first Half-Life before I played Warcraft 3. And Half-Life was like the first time I really remember kind of being impressed and interested in the actual narrative that a game was telling me. Obviously, Ocarina of Time had blown my mind, but like it was like I've been on a hero's journey. It was pretty light in character development in that game. So Ocarina didn't blow my mind because of the story. It blew my mind just because of the game itself and the world. So when I got to Warcraft 3 and went in with, at the time, a pretty damn low opinion of RTSs because until then I had only ever played RTSs on the N64 and they controlled like butt. I wasn't expecting much.
Wait, I'm sorry. I have to butt in and I'm sorry. I do this, you know.
Yeah.
What RTSs did you play on the N64?
StarCraft and Command and Conquer.
No way. That was on the N64.
That was on the N64 and I didn't
StarCraft was on the N64.
I did not touch an RTS until Warcraft 3 after. I never played an RTS on the PC until I tried Warcraft 3.
I never even knew it was on the N64.
Yeah, that would be terrible. Horrendous. Yes, you control a mouse cursor with that one middle banana joystick.
No, because at least the Super Nintendo had the Super Mouse. It had a mouse, the Super Nintendo, that you could get, whereas the N64 didn't have a mouse. You could get the Super Mouse, and you could only use it for Super Mario Paint, which costs like $80.
Yes, I vaguely remember that.
That's the system they should have released StarCraft on. Oh my word!
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. So anyway, I had this weird thing in my head that like top down was a lame thing, like a lame camera angle to play a game by. Like I wanted to be down in it. I was very into first person shooters at the time, and just started playing. And I distinctly remember, like they got me. They got me hook, line, and sinker. Now it's a product of the time where I didn't play Final Fantasy VII. Everybody, I'm sure everyone else was like, "Oh, Final Fantasy VII. This was my experience." I didn't play it. I have literally no reverence for that game whatsoever. For me, it was Warcraft 3, and I remember like playing as Arthas in the opening chapters and just thinking, yeah, okay, he's blonde hair, he's a prince, he's the paladin, this is the good guy. And when he went full Darth Vader, it blew my mind, Taliesin. I did not see it coming. I couldn't believe it. And I was just so into it. So I love Darth Vader. I love those stories. I'm always here for the fall from grace. And Warcraft 3 I didn't see it coming. I'm
going to ask you a question now, Garrett, and I want you to understand. I want everyone listening to understand. Okay, I don't want you to second guess me here. Okay, because I'm not being disparaging of the story of Warcraft 3. I'm not being disparaging of you as a consumer. How old were you at the time? Just out of interest.
17.
Huh. Interesting.
Maybe
discerning.
Maybe 18. I think I started playing it right before WoW released because I couldn't actually play WoW at the time. My computer couldn't handle it.
That makes sense. No, I mean that is I was not playing Warcraft 3 at that time, so and enough people have told me how well done that story is, particularly for the time.
Yeah, that's why I
believe them. I have no reason not to believe them.
That's why I was trying to sprinkle like so many modifiers into it. Is I'm doing my best to paint you a picture of like how few narrative forward games I had played at the time, or even really existed at the time.
Absolutely, can concur.
Yeah. So and the fact that it was sold through an RTS also kind of like caught me with my guard down. I'm like, oh damn, they're going places with this story. Plus, like I was also really surprised at the time, if we're just talking Warcraft 3 in general, by like the whole Thrall arc, even though Thrall is not one of my favorite characters. I was like, these orcs are like developed characters and they're not just monsters. And I didn't know any of this going into Warcraft 3. I was very, very ignorant to the world of Warcraft, as one might say. But yeah, like as I've mentioned, I've alluded to in the past on this very show and others, like wanting to pick up like the Arthas threads in World of Warcraft. That was my main driving force behind going and playing World of Warcraft in the first place. And then very quickly just fell in love with the game, fell in love with the mechanics, fell in love with being a purple elf, and having a great time all around. But that was like kind of what led me into World of Warcraft, like going to the Plaguelands for the first time and seeing the remnants of Arthas and the Scourge. It was like, it fills me with so many, it makes me feel like a kid again. Anytime I like step foot in anything vaguely related to Arthas, the Lich King, the Scourge, anything of that nature, and also because of just my extreme fondness for Wrath of the Lich King, I got to go with Arthas. There's no other answer for me.
And people often see kind of Wrath of the Lich King as being almost like the climax of the golden age of WoW and Warcraft as a franchise in many ways. I hear people kind of talk about that a lot. And the idea that that sort of classic WoW, if they do go on to other expansions, they'll take in Burning Crusade and they'll take in Wrath of the Lich King, but it would seem wrong to go any further than that. And part of that is because that kind of represents the opening kind of golden age, I think. And I feel like a lot of that had to do with the continuation of the idea of Arthas, even though he wasn't present in the first two WoW games.
Yeah, I think that's true for the Arthas bit, but also just for like the mechanics bit and how WoW behaved. Like WoW felt very beholden to vanilla, I think, up through maybe the final patch of Wrath of the Lich King. Once Dungeon Finder got in, I think that kind of cued the next generation of what WoW would be.
Well, I mean, Classic literally changed the game world as well. So Cataclysm literally changed the game world as well, which you know is quite an easy place to put a break. Yeah, if you're actually kind of literally churning up the old zones and turning them to something new with new quests and something, that's quite an easy place to put like a marker and say, okay, this is like the start of a new era sort of thing. Mm-hmm. You know, like that bit where you go into I think Folding Ideas did a good bit on this. That bit where you go into Orgrimmar in Cataclysm, and the view of Orgrimmar as you go through the gates in vanilla and classic, right up to Wrath of the Lich King is one thing. And then in Cataclysm, it suddenly turned into this chrome, spiky, evil-looking thing, which kind of like spoiled the kind of entire. And this ain't your daddy's horde. This is Cataclysm. This is a new WoW. Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
and it's weird because Arthas still casts a huge shadow over WoW today, and I've always had a complicated relationship with Arthas as a result. Really, coming to the game a bit later. Not having played Warcraft 3, and kind of a similar relationship that I've had with Thrall, really, in that he was one of the characters that people would always bring up, who kind of meant nothing to me, and had sort of no bearing on my gameplay experience. And as such, I used to find quite annoying, because, you know, if someone just bangs on about, and you know how, like, if someone tells you have to watch The West Wing, and you're like, shut up. I know, apparently it's really good. Apparently The West Wing's really good, but I'm never going to watch it. There's like 1,000 episodes. It's never going to happen. I'm not going to sit down and watch. I'm
literally that person.
Yeah. Like, it's not going to happen. And at the same time, I'll happily tell people to go and watch The Wire. But yeah, and I'm sure they feel the same about me. But for me, Arthas is like The West Wing. Everyone's talking about it all the time and saying how great it is. And I'm like, oh, shut up. I mean, I'm sure it is, but just you talking about it now is annoying me. And kind of like, right, okay, when I was in primary school, you know, like I didn't go to a religious primary school, but my school was religious in the same way that all schools were back in those days, back in the late 80s, early 90s. And you know, we had to do little prayers every morning in assembly, and you know, the Sikh kids got to go and sit out, and I was really jealous of them. And you know, we'd always talk about how great Jesus was, and because I'm British, I've got a bit of a thing for the underdog. And I was always like, everyone always goes on about Jesus, but what about God? No one ever talks about God. If I was God, I'd be really, really pissed off. They talk about Jesus all the time. God's my favorite because he's the one that doesn't get the attention. It's all about Jesus. And you know,
this got weirdly deep. At least I thought it was about to get really deep, and then it got pleasantly shallow.
I was 5, Garrett, and you know, like, same reason I didn't like Leonardo in the Turtles, because he was like the leader. I was like, everyone's all about Leonardo. Oh, yeah, yes. I'm a Raphael man. So I was like, screw Leonardo, I'm a Raphael man. Screw Jesus, I'm a God man.
Okay, well, so if I'm always drawn to the character like Arthas, who frankly stays bad, but typically in fiction, especially like cheesy, nerdy fiction.
What I'm saying is, Arthas is like Jesus to me, Garrett.
Okay, first of all, Thrall is very much frequently referenced to as Green Jesus, so you should think of Thrall that way and not Arthas.
Which I always found very stupid, because Thrall is clearly Moses. He's clearly not Jesus. Like, he's very specifically a Moses allegory. Like, he leads his people across the ocean to a new promised land, like on the say-so of some, like, magic man with a beard. I mean, a magic man with a beard comes to him and says, Thrall, you must lead your people, okay? Your people who are like slaves, your name is Thrall. You must lead your people who are slaves. You must lead them to the new promised land across the ocean. Like Thrall is literally Moses. Like, he was found in a Moses basket.
I was about to say, he was even sent down a river in a basket. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, when people call Thrall Green Jesus, like, it's a cheap allegory, because he is actually specifically and explicitly Moses. But anyway, that's just a little point. Doesn't matter.
Right.
I've never read the Bible.
Welcome to WoW Killer, everybody. If this is your first episode, this is exactly how it always goes. But Yes, watch The Wire, everyone. Taliesin is correct. But who would you say, who's your favorite main WoW character, the best WoW character?
Well, let me tell you about my relationship with my wife, Evertel, who is very jealous of my other relationship with my favorite WoW character, Jaina Proudmoore. Jaina Proudmoore, I wish I hadn't picked up this statue and brought it all the way over to the camera, because now I'm going to have to put it back. Excuse me.
It's very large and looks quite heavy.
It's brilliant. I love it. It's the best £350 I ever spent. Or however much I spent on it. I don't know. I can't remember, but I spent more. Jaina. And again, because I came to the game a little bit late, I've got a bit of a complicated relationship with Jaina as well. It took me a while to really get on board with any WoW lore and any major WoW lore. Because I came to it late, and I was always a bit snooty about WoW in general before I started playing it, because it is famously a ripoff of a franchise that I really like ever since I was a very young kid, Games Workshop Warhammer. Famously, Warcraft was conceived as an actual Warhammer game until the game was almost finished, and then they lost the license. So they made a Warhammer game and then had to change all the names so it could be something else. And that's literally why Warcraft exists.
How Dota of them.
Yeah, famously. And like the irony then being that as far as the orcs are concerned, at least, they've actually done like a lot better work on characterization and sort of like filling in those races than Warhammer ever managed, despite the fact Warhammer's existed twice as long. But so I was always a bit snooty about it. When I eventually came to the game and experienced things like the Titans and the Old Gods, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, but, because they are so clearly just ripped wholesale from kind of, existing mythos elsewhere, and the bare minimum of even changing them to fit into the Warcraft lore has happened because Chris Metzen had to write all of this in an afternoon, basically. That I was always quite snooty about it, so I was very kind of resistant to Warcraft lore and characters for the longest time, despite how much I enjoyed the game. And Jaina was one of those people. I kind of like dismissed her because her original model is like the most tropey, sexy female wizard in fantasy. There she is in her metal bra and her skirt and her perfect belly button. And I just dismissed her as being like, well, there's your sexy fantasy wizard. And because that's all the thought I gave it. And then she became a little bit more interesting when Theramore happened, and I knew about that, but I still wasn't that fussed because I wasn't really following Warcraft lore. And I remember the exact day I started becoming a Jaina fan. It's when I was making because I was already making videos by this point. The channel already existed. I was still not sold on Jaina at all. And I was making the best music in WoW video, or my favorite music in WoW video for a very early Taliesin and Evertel video. It's a two-parter. Like, proportionately, statistically, no one has watched those videos. They've got like 40,000 views each. So go and watch them. They're really good. And I was going through like all the music in WoW, trying to find my favorite. Grizzly Hills was the winner, obviously. But I came across the Jaina music, the Jaina theme tune from Mr. Pandaria. And the image that the YouTube video for Jaina's music had been teamed up with. Can you find this on YouTube really quick so you just play a little blast of it? Because I feel like it's kind of important. Because I know if I play something, it doesn't come over the sound on this stream, but it does if you do it.
What is the name of the song?
Just Jaina's theme will do it. But and the image that they'd used to kind of show this on the actual video of YouTube was the image from the front of the book, which shows Jaina kind of like drowning, and she's in profile and she's like screaming, and her scream is like in the water. And with this music combined, that was enough to make me a Jaina fanboy. It is from Mr. Pandaria, I'm sure.
It's specifically from patch 5.1. You probably can't hear this, but it's playing right now.
And there's many, many different versions of it, but there's one which is like very minimal. Because there's one which is all like, oh, but there's also one which is like, ding, 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 like that, and it's great. And it's awesome.
Again, you can't hear it, but it is playing right now, and it is just a string arrangement. It's wonderful. I've never heard this. This is beautiful.
You've never heard it?
No!
I mean, they have variations of it in BFA and stuff as well, as you'd imagine. And it's mind-blowing, and it's wonderful, and it's heartbreaking, and it was enough on its own to make me a fan of Jaina. And I decided at that point, about halfway through Legion when I was making this video, that I was now a fan of Jaina. And like, just that music was enough to kind of trigger something in my brain that made me look at her whole story in a different way. And kind of, you know, because she was sexy fantasy wizard lady who kind of only existed to be the girlfriend of like the main guy, Arthas, and be part of his tragedy. But then she kind of goes on to become like someone who goes through a lot of tragedy herself, and you know, becomes angry baddie woman. That was kind of like the discussion around her during Mists. You know, she's angry baddie woman now. She's a dreadlord. When will she be the baddie that we all fight? And when BFA was announced, I was already at the stage where I was a big Jaina fan. And of course, she didn't appear in Legion at all after the opening when she got angry and went away, which obviously fueled the fires of people talking about her becoming a baddie even more. Because, you know, she was in Dalaran when Khadgar invited the Horde back into Dalaran, and she was like, no, Khadgar, this is wrong. You're bad. We should have dismantled the Horde. I'm the angry woman. And the thing is, when people when women, especially in World of Warcraft, become angry, we've kind of become used to them going on to become baddies and bosses that we fight, which again, it's a reason I wasn't like totally on board with the lore for a long time. But, you know, we clearly kind of moved beyond that a little bit. And so I think everyone expected Jaina to go away and come back as a baddie, except me, because I had heard the Jaina theme music from Mists. And so I knew that could never possibly happen. And when BFA was announced, and I was there sitting in a seat that Patrick Beja couldn't sit in the front row watching this happen at BlizzCon when BFA was announced in the main hall, and the BFA features trailer, which is the first thing they showed before the cinematic, ended with that new model for Jaina, who I like to call Bondage Jaina, because of like her many, many straps and bits of string that she has on her costume these days. Everyone else calls her Elsa Jaina, but she's not. She's Bondage Jaina. And when she kind of like stepped up on screen there, my heart just sang. And I was like, oh my God, we're getting the Jaina expansion. We're going to Kultiras. We're getting the Jaina expansion. And I was so happy. And then BFA didn't let us down at all. And it was brilliant. And it was fantastic. And it gave me everything that I need. Okay, all the stuff with Throst was a bit weird, didn't really make sense. But it allowed us to have that cool cinematic where it kind of had people from her past kind of like giving her shit and stuff. And it was brilliant. And BFA will always live fondly in my memory. Like, Azerite armor is bad, but it is not bad enough to erase how satisfying all the Jaina stuff in BFA has been for me. And we even got to fight her as a raid boss as well, but not make her a real baddie, which is fantastic. Like, it's so good and so well done. And one of the best story arcs in WoW now.
I
for sure.
Can't really argue with that. I'm really fond of Jaina as a character as well. Might be my favorite Alliance character. Yeah, that tracks. I'm going to go with it.
Yeah. I'm going to say something a bit controversial here as well. Anduin is up there for me these days as well.
Oh.
But more as a concept than an actual character. Like, the thing I like about Anduin is I like that he was literally like 12 years old when we first met him in World of Warcraft. I remember when I first started playing WoW, and you know, everyone talks about when you first start playing WoW and you're a human character and you go out into Elwyn Forest and the feels, and then you run up from Goldshire, you run up to Stormwind, and it's your first big city, and it's like, and there's the statues, and you're like, ooh, who are these people? Well, that's not Khadgar, because he looks much hotter than that. But anyway, and then you run into Stormwind, and you know, you go up into the throne room, and there's this little 12-year-old standing there, and you're like, oh man, the child models in this game are so bad. And I can't attack them. It's so annoying. But then we've literally seen him grow up, and in as close to real time as you're possibly going to get. And I feel like it's something that has kind of never happened in gaming before. I feel like WoW, as it's in its position as the most popular MMO for the longest time, kind of breaks new ground even just by existing every day, really. And I think Anduin is a really good example of that. You know, we've been able to see a character literally grow from 12-year-old into the king and kind of everything in between in real time. And there's a very real argument that the story of WoW is the story of Anduin. You know, not Warcraft as a whole, but the story of World of Warcraft. You could make a pretty solid argument that it's the story of Anduin. And I find that really satisfying. I really like it. So I like him as a concept more than as an actual character.
I'm about to say, because he's the most Leonardo-ass Leonardo since Leonardo.
Yeah, well, maybe. I don't know, man. He's gone through a lot more stuff than Leonardo ever went through. Like, what did Leonardo have to go through? Sometimes Splinter would go, "Oh, you need to work on your leadership skills, Leonardo." And he'd be like, "Oh, no, I'm not the party dude. I wish I was the party dude. I don't even do machines."
If you haven't watched the animated TMNT movie, he had to go through a pretty rough patch with Raphael, and that movie's incredible, and you should go watch it.
What he did in the live action movie as well, like one of the main beats of the live action movie is the fractured relationship between Leonardo and Raphael.
Yeah, but it's so much
because Raphael in the first live action movie is like a proper New York like docker.
Oh yeah,
you know, he's awesome, and so he like really clashes with Leonardo.
Oh, in the first don't you turtle splain to me, Taliesin. I had a birthday party to go see the first live action Ninja Turtles movie.
Still one of the best movies ever made, and I'll fight anyone who says otherwise.
We will not.
Fact.
We will not fight this day.
No.
So, well, that leaves us with bouncing back to who we think are the worst main characters. And I will tee this up with my award goes to Malfurion. He infuriates me.
You stole my one!
With his existence. I cannot stand whenever he talks. I don't like being... And I love night elves. Like, it is this weird dichotomy with me where so much of my warmest, fuzziest feelings in World of Warcraft come from logging in for the first time into a night elf hunter and experiencing that entire zone. And at the same time, when I hear Malfurion's voice, I want to throw my monitor out the window.
Especially during Legion, I'd imagine.
Oh, yes. Yes.
There's also the fact, and this is important, and we can't underplay it, and it seems like a really nitpicking thing, okay? It seems like a really, really nitpicky thing, but honestly, it's not. And as someone who didn't read like the books, the trilogy of books that they all featured in very heavily in the early days, and whose first experience of Malfurion really was in Cataclysm during those Darkshore quests, where Ashara makes an appearance as well, which should be really cool. It's like a cool storyline. He looks like a big chicken, and I feel like this is a really important thing. Like, he's meant to be this cool druid. This awesome night elf druid who's like the original druid and who is the king of the druids and who sleeps a lot, yeah, but is also like uber powerful. But he looks like a big chicken though. And the first time you see him, you're like, who's this chicken ass mofo? Who is this guy telling me what to do? Why does he look like he looks like a boomkin, but he's not a boomkin. Why has he got why is he, and the thing is the Cataclysm model, the wings are quite clearly literally tied to his arm with straps. So it literally looks like he has come dressed as a chicken, like just because he thinks that looks cool. And you're like, why have you done that, Malfurion? Because there was always some ambiguity before of whether the wings were like part of his body because he was a druid or whatever. But like in the Cataclysm model, it certainly looks like they're tied to his arm, and that just makes it look like he's dressed up because he thinks that looks cool.
I do remember when we got that Malfurion model, thinking, "Oh damn, that's kind of cool looking." So,
it's not though, is it? He looks like a chicken.
A little bit. A little. I do like chickens.
He looks like I mean, that's all I ever thought. For the longest time, Malfurion was the chicken ass dude.
I can't really nail down exactly why I dislike him so much, because I think druids are inherently cool. Like the concept of, and even night elf druids, like these idea of these like crazy, like forever night forest dwelling elves, but the ones that can take the form of animals that, you know, they can throw down physically when they need to, but are also spellcasters. I think that's really freaking cool. And there's just something about Malfurion that makes it the most like vanilla Boy Scout, just somehow robs it of what I think makes druids unique and rad. Like we barely spent any time with him in the game. But he had a pretty strong arc or just existence in the early days of the WoW comics. Brawl Bearmantle, I think, is an infinitely cooler druid than Malfurion. Just kind of embodies that spirit of I don't know, just this terrifying force that you find. It's I don't know. To me, like druids and kind of what Brawl Bearmantle kind of inhabits is like the polar opposite of what I think of when I think of like a high fantasy elf, because they're built like Dwayne the Rock Johnson, and they're gonna just tear you in half. And I think that's awesome. And Malfurion just somehow removes all of that from the equation.
It's the chicken arms. It's the chicken arms. I'm telling you, like that's what it is. Like anytime and a word in defense of Malfurion here, for the sake of fairness. As people have already pointed out in the chat, in the 8.2 or 8.15, was it? I can't remember. In the cinematic, the 8.15 cinematic, the Darkshore cinematic, the Terror of Darkshore, I believe it was called, where he kills like the entire kind of Kodo party in Darkshore.
They basically do
Kodo
like
party.
It's like it reminds me of the.
He is total badass.
Oh,
but even then, Garrett, he's got weird chicken arms. And you might be thinking to yourself, I wish Tally could get over this chicken arm thing. And honestly, I wish I could too, but I can't. Whatever he does, and no matter how awesome it is, he could play the Jason Statham character in Hobbs and Shaw, my favorite movie of all time, and the character I would most rather be than any other character in media, the Jason Statham character in Hobbs and Shaw. He could be that guy, but if he had his weird little chicken arms, I wouldn't buy it.
Well, despite the fact that the world deciding Jason Statham was an action star was the biggest mistake in the history of Hollywood.
Doesn't that give you faith in humanity? In the same way that, like, Dustin Hoffman became like a sex icon back in the 70s, and it gave hope to everyone. Like, doesn't Jason Statham being lauded as like an action star, doesn't that make you think, do you know what? The world isn't such a bad place after all? Because I've met Jason Statham. I met him in a bar, and he's about 5 inches tall. You could pick him up and you could put him in your pocket. I'm pretty sure that to make Hobbs and Shaw, because The Rock is not a small man, I'm pretty sure to make Hobbs and Shaw, they had to employ like lots of Lord of the Rings kind of techniques, perspective tricks, to make it seem like they were even slightly the same species. Because Jason Statham is like, The Rock is clearly a superior race of giants, and Jason Statham's like a micro machine. I'm sure that all the cars that he drives in that movie are micro machines.
They just put a body, they just scaled down the body of a Jaguar and actually put it around a mini frame.
And yet, Hobbs and Shaw, best movie ever made. Crank 2, second best movie ever made. And yet, if he had little chicken arms like Malfurion, I wouldn't buy it. We wouldn't be having this conversation. We wouldn't be talking about how cool Jason Statham is.
He does have little chicken arms compared to The Rock.
But they're not covered in feathers, though. Quite the opposite. Jason Statham is smooth as a baby.
And his head isn't covered in hair either.
They made a Crank 2.
Oh, good guy.
And they said, what was all the best stuff from Crank 1? We're going to crank it up. Crank 2's amazing.
Yeah. So, cool. Well,
anyway, what I'm saying is, I agree with your Malfurion stuff, and I agree that he's got an annoying voice, and I agree that he's a boring Boy Scout. But for me, the thing that really kills it is the fact that he is a chicken. He's an actual, literal chicken with chicken arms.
I think part of it too is also just he's constantly side by side with Tyrande, who is infinitely cooler.
Well, that's true. That's also true. But I feel like that should make him cooler as a result. that his close association with Tyrande should make him cooler.
You'd think.
All of this said, Terror of Darkshore is an amazing cinematic, and he beats down on those peons. And it looks really badass.
The only time I have liked Malfurion is literally the only time I've liked Malfurion is that cinematic. They worked magic with that cinematic. But yeah, well, cool. Well, let's move on. Let's move on to expansion specific then, since we had the same answer.
Well, okay, so let's open this out to expansion specific, because this is secondary characters really, or even tertiary characters. So expansion specific, or if you so prefer, like from accompanying media. So maybe they were just in one expansion, or maybe they were in a book or comic or something like that.
I like that. I think that's a fair set of rules.
Yeah. So my favorite secondary character, just off the top of my head, because there've been so many that I really, really like. My probable favorite, whose name escapes me right now because I love him so much, is that orc from Cataclysm, from the day that Deathwing came, from the best quest ever in the history of World of Warcraft. Apart from that one when you're a big bull killing gnomes, that's a good one too. But the second best quest ever in World of Warcraft, where you get told the story from this orc about how he wanted to punch Deathwing in the face. So he did. I think his name is even Orcus. I might be wrong about that. I'm sure chat will
Oh my god, this is a deep cut. I forgot about this entirely. You are right.
Do you remember this?
This is the correct answer.
He gets on a motorbike, and you join him on his motorbike as he tells the story. And for a start, it's an amazing quest, because you hear the story from... it's the dwarf that punches... the dwarf punches Deathwing in the face.
His name is Seldurin.
Okay. And anyway, the orc gets on a motorbike, and he has to choose like a hot babe to get on the motorbike with him, who he saves. And one of the choices is a male blood elf. It's a recurring joke through through Cataclysm that male blood elves keep getting mistaken for females, which I can't decide is hilarious or like incredibly offensive. And then you drive through like fireballs and stuff blowing up the zone where you're in, and then you fly along on his bike. And that's one of my favorite characters. My other one, as a serious answer, is probably Runas from Legion. The mana addict, who you encounter in Azuna.
Yes, dude, I went on a little, I think we all went on a journey with Runas, quickly, and it doesn't end well.
No, and Azuna is an amazing zone. Like, Azuna is quite clearly, because the zones in Legion, it's been said by the devs, were originally designed with an order. Much like we're going to get in Shadowlands. We're going back to that now, but they were designed to have an order in which you completed them, just like pretty much every other WoW expansion before that. Before the zone scaling came in as a new feature of Legion, which allowed us to then do the zones in any order we wanted. And Azuna was quite clearly, I remember thinking this at the time, even before I knew that they'd been concepted as having an order. Azuna was quite obviously the first zone that you were supposed to go to in Legion. It was the closest one to Dalaran. Like, when you got on your bird with Khadgar and started flying down, he basically explained the plot of the expansion to you as you did that, and you flew down and you saw the Naga coming into Azuna, and he was explaining the concept of the Pillars of Creation and stuff like that. And then the first place you land is a bunch of demon hunters fighting demons in a big demony thing, and you're like, okay, this is clearly supposed to be the first zone in the expansion. I'm glad I happened to come here first. And the storyline very quickly branches out into like the mana addicts of Azuna and the Night Fallen, and those amazing kind of like shaky, bony models, which were kind of like quite on the nose really as sort of drug addicts, sort of elves, which was, I remember thinking at the time, I was a bit like, it's a bit near the knuckle really. And Runas, and his voice actor is amazing. I can't remember who the voice actor was now, but he's been in like Pillars of Creation and all sorts of stuff.
It's it's Jim Cummings, Winnie the Pooh.
Thank you.
He is all over World of Warcraft.
Exquisite job. Yeah, it is. And he's one of what should have been could have easily been a stock character, but it's just fun and enjoyable all the way through. And then a tragic ending where where he does kind of disappear and become a shambling sort of a lost, and starts walking away, and it's brilliant. He's just a great example of a really well contained, interesting character, and just a really good example of what you can do in the medium when you actually kind of commit to it and put some effort in and have a through line through a zone. So he'd be my actual favorite tertiary character.
When we were thinking about expansion specific characters, Runus was actually the first thing that popped into my mind. And then I thought about it for a little bit and came up with my answer, which is Bwonsamdi.
Ah, nice.
I was thinking about it and I was like, oh God, is my answer from BFA? I think it is. Like Bwonsamdi I found infinitely entertaining to have on screen. Anytime Bwonsamdi came around in BFA, I was like, yes, more of this dude. Because it was just, he was such an unknown quantity to me going in. I mean, he's barely been in World of Warcraft up to that point. Yeah. And I just love it. I love the character model. I don't care if it's basically Ryuk from Death Note, but a troll.
You don't care? I cared a lot, and it makes it much better.
You're right. It does make it. It actually improves how much I like Bwonsamdi. But the character is so different while still being, a death god.
Yeah, and Bwonsamdi has the best voice actor in the game.
Yes,
like bar none. There is not a better voice actor doing a better job and there are some amazing voice actors in WoW these days, but there is no one doing a better job than Bwonsamdi. Like, it's incredible.
It just absolutely. It was a real big delay because I went into BFA, frankly, wanting to play Alliance. But at the time I was like, I'm going to raid Horde. So I did my Horde character first. But I went in like, I want to play Alliance. We're really picking up Jaina threads. I'm a big Jaina fan. The Kultira stuff looks so much cooler than hanging out in a pink pyramid. And I think part of that was the reason why Bwonsamdi was like such a stuck landing for me. Because I don't know, I was like having all of this FOMO about what was happening over on the Alliance side, and then Bwonsamdi hits, and I'm like, never mind, I chose correctly. This character is incredible. I can't believe the story that we're telling with these trolls. Because also, like, with the Zandalari, I'm like, I've seen enough of these trolls, this tribe of trolls. I don't need to see more Zandalari. They've shown up multiple times, and I was just wrong on so many accounts. But I'm just leaving BFA being like, oh boy, I hope we're not done with Bwonsamdi. I want to see more of this character. I want to see where they take this next.
I got good news for you, Garrett. You haven't seen the last of Bwonsamdi. And if I really wanted to nitpick this and I wanted to be a bit of a dick, I'd say that, Bwonsamdi doesn't really count as expansion specific character because he is coming back in Shadowlands as well. Well, famously. Like he's going to be a main character in the new book. Shadows Rise, is it called? And
the book that you totally knew about and weren't able to talk about on the previous episode.
I don't know what you're talking about. And he's got an entire dungeon dedicated to him in Shadowlands as well. So he's clearly going to feature in the story quite heavily.
Oh, I'm certain. But whatever, man. We barely have ever even knew he existed until Battle for Azeroth. So don't step to me, Alliance main. Don't step to me.
But I think that's an awesome choice. That's a really, really good choice.
Yeah.
Bwonsamdi is a legit brilliant character. Just really cool.
Love him to pieces. And just recently replayed through him fighting with King Rastakhan's Loa during that quest line. That was great. What a great little in-game scene.
All that stuff is awesome. I'd like to give a honorable mention in this section to Flynn Fairwind as well. Yeah. I think it's a cracking character with a really good voice actor in BFA. Although I suspect we'll probably see him in other expansions as well. He's certainly going to feature in other media because they're writing a book about him and Shaw. Christy Golden's working on that. It's a short story that's monster manual.
Yeah, it's going in the Eastern Kingdoms book, so it's going to be like
and so they're like the holding device. They're the framing device to kind of exploring the Eastern Kingdoms.
Off on a lover's cruise. It's going to be wonderful.
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be so good. I can't wait.
It's going to be great. And so who's your favorite expansion specific? Oh, you already said Runas. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So then we get into least favorite, which I'll bat the ball back to you.
I'm not sure, honestly. I'm not sure. I think, do you know what? Just because it's fresh in my mind, rather than going back to, older expansions, which I wasn't so involved in, there are definitely some in Mists that kind of didn't hit the mark for me amongst the Pandaren and things like that. As much as I love Mists, and there are definitely some in WoD with the kind of like the reimaginings of characters that I liked quite a lot. I think much as I enjoyed the boss fight, the characterization of Black Hand in WoD, I really didn't like at all, and I felt like he was done a massive disservice. As a character that I felt should have been much more important and much better and more interesting.
I started thinking about WoD for my answer.
And also Grom, of course, from WoD, who, as you know, I despise because he's a war criminal and a genocider and the baddie of that expansion, and all he needs to do to get forgiven for trying to do a genocide, trying to kill everyone on his world and our world, all he has to do to get forgiven for that is to be captured by the Legion.
Well, that's not his fault. That's everyone else's fault for... It's not Grom's fault.
He wants to genocide the Draenor. He wants to kill our characters and everyone on Azeroth, okay? And then he gets captured by the Legion, and then we save him, and then no one says, hey, do you remember when, like, before you got captured by the Legion, you wanted to genocide everyone and kill us all, and we couldn't stop you, but the Legion did. And now we've got you out of the Legion, so now everything's fine. What?
What? His war crimes.
Sorry. It's like if Saddam Hussein had got captured by the Legion, so suddenly he was okay.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I am saying that him being forgiven is not his fault. It's not his fault.
Okay, fair enough. But he was still a terrible character. And if he wasn't a terrible character, he might have even said, well, I'm a bit surprised you've forgiven me so easily, to be honest. All I did was spin around a bit.
Yeah, I started thinking of Warlords of Draenor when I was thinking of like who rubbed me the wrongest way in an expansion specifically, and WoD, all of the orcs were just this cascade of like flavorless oatmeal in terms of how they affected me that I couldn't even pick one out specifically. It was like these are all
Orgrim in WoD got effed over absolutely much more than anyone else. Yeah,
Orgrim. Yeah.
Poor old Orgrim.
Yeah, but that's like the ball that was dropped the hardest, right? Like that's not like my least favorite. That was just kind of most disappointing.
Kargarth got absolutely dicked.
Yeah.
He looked so great, and then you just killed him as the first boss in the first raid.
All I can think of, I think it's because you mentioned Ninja Turtles, but all of the warlords of Draenor just felt like forgotten background villains in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Okay, so my least favorite expansion-specific character is all of the Warlords of Draenor. That's what I'm saying.
Yep, that tracks.
Isn't it funny how, like, we were all managed to pick out characters that we loved from BFA, and yet, we all hate the characters from WoD because, BFA is a much worse expansion than WoD, and don't you ever forget it.
No.
I don't even like Yrel. I think Yrel's a terrible character as well. She's so boring.
I don't like Yrel either.
She should have been so good.
Yeah.
She's not. She's a boring character. She's rubbish.
The Draenei kind of bore me to tears. Like
I love the Draenei. I love the Draenei.
I'm not a Draenei fan. I'm really not.
Who's that amazing Lightforged Draenei who I love from the Lightforged Unlock quest?
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, I don't remember his name. I know who you're talking about. Yeah, I did like that Draenei, even though I cannot remember his name.
Tepartos. Tepartos is incredible. How can you not love Tepartos? How can you sit there, Garrett, in your chair, if that is your name, and say that you don't like the Draenei when Tepartos exists? For goodness sake. He's amazing.
An exception.
But otherwise, I kind of get...
He's an exception to a goatman race that don't interest me.
And that awesome Lightforged Draenei who dies in the missions leading up to the Battle for Dazara Lore as well, in the attack on the Bloodgate.
Yep.
He's brilliant too.
Yep. All right, you might fight me on this because of this character's existence in more than one expansion, but I'm going to go with Bran Bronzebeard from Wrath of the Lich King because I
agree with you. You're on. Yeah, okay. Totally.
I wanted to delete him from the game. And while I was thinking about this made me realize that Magni in in BFA is just Bran Bronzebeard from Wrath of the Lich King. And why, Taliesin, do they hate dwarves so much and just make them the most insufferable fetch quest giving bastards in the world?
Yeah, they've really copped out of dwarves. One day we'll get a proper dwarf expansion, and maybe we can actually look at their kind of lore. I mean, you got those nice quests in Cataclysm where you do the dwarf wedding and stuff. That's quite fun, but that's as good as dwarfs ever get in WoW. Unfortunately, yeah,
I think Brewfest is the best dwarves.
Oh, and Brewfest is cool, but I feel like WoW dropped the ball straight away with dwarves by not like copping out, because one of the original plans was to give female dwarves beards in WoW. That was like one of the original concepts, and they copped out of that. It would have been amazing, because like female dwarfs are still to this day the least played race in the entire game, even since they look a bit better now with their new models. But if they'd had beards, everyone would play them. Fact. Every character would be a female dwarf. That's just a fact. And the second way they dropped the ball on them was by giving them stupid, like, Lord of the Rings Scottish accents. I see why they did. And honestly, the fact that they did have Lord of the Rings Scottish accents probably is not an insubstantial part of why WoW was so popular, because it came along right at the right time with all of the Lord of the Rings hype and stuff like that. So I can see why it happened, but they were crying out to not just be Lord of the Rings ripoffs, and they were crying out to have like in the Warcraft movie, Magni has a London accent, a South London accent, like a Cockney accent. And it's like, oh, I made you a boomstick. Sounds like Jason Statham. If all dwarves sound like Jason Statham, be amazing, be brilliant. Or if they had just like another British regional accent instead of Scottish, if they had Welsh accents or West Country accents, or because I know that for the original Lord of the Rings movies, they did like audition a lot of West Country actors. And there was a thought of making dwarves West Country and like Somerset rather than Scottish. So it could have gone that way. And I wish they'd done that in the games, in the Warcraft games. And I think the problem with Scottish accents, which is unique to any accent in the world, the problem with Scottish accents is every American thinks they can do a Scottish accent. And they can't. So I think if it had been any other accent, they would have got actors from that place to do the accent. But because it was Scottish, they were like, we can do a Scottish accent. That guy who works on the other day, he can do a great Scottish accent. We'll just do the accents. It's fine. We don't need people from Scotland to do the accents. We'll just do the Scottish accents. It's fine. And they're the worst. They're the worst.
Terrified.
They're great.
I am terrified to admit that I really like the dwarf voice work.
I hate it so much.
I find it endearing. It's like playing D&D with my buddy who does a bad Scottish accent. It's great.
And I appreciate that it's part of the thing now, since Lord of the Rings. Like, the dwarves in Lord of the Rings are kind of like Yul Brynner in The King and I. You know how like you can't even imagine Yul Brynner's part in The King and I as being anyone else apart from him. Like all people that play the King and the King and I have to be like a handsome bald man now because of that movie. And it's like that. All dwarves in fantasy media have to be Scottish now. And it's a real shame because I think it's such a waste, especially because the guy that plays Gimli in Lord of the Rings is like an amazing Welsh actor with a beautiful, thick Welsh accent. And if he'd been allowed to do it in that voice, it'd have been so good. I guess I'm just predisposed to dislike dwarves in WoW because of what could have been. And then when the Kulturian humans came along and they did use all these different regional accents, like they do use Somerset accents and they do use like Northern Leeds accents, which I think is amazing for some of the characters. Oh my God, who's the character in BFA, the big Kulturian lady who is like the monster hunter? And you get her to be like the vice captain of your ship. What's she called?
How are you forgetting the name of this character? Because you're the only reason I've heard of this character.
Rosaline, thank you.
Yes,
she is up there with my favorite ever characters in WoW. not just expansion specific characters. She's up there with like my literal favorite characters in WoW. She is just so cool. I know we've moved on from that topic, but I'm trying to clear the air and make it a bit better and not talk about horrible stuff anymore. And she's amazing.
It's almost like WoW's sourcing of voice talent has really improved over the years, and then you know, dwarves being a player race that's been there since the beginning of the game has been a bit locked in.
Yeah, do you know what? That's a really good point. Yeah. And Magni hasn't helped the dwarf cause in this expansion either. Like, Magni has gone from being just some dude, like some king dwarf dude, to being a pretty obnoxiously annoying character, I think.
Listeners, if you haven't, you really should go watch T&E's The Reason You Hate BFA video, because you make a perfect argument for why Magni kind of just stinks.
He's the worst, man. Hate that dude.
I love dwarves.
I was always ambivalent to him before, but now I hate him.
Yeah, I love dwarves.
And I quite like Moira. She's okay.
They pop up to the front of my mind when I think of being annoyed in World of Warcraft quite often. So it's sad, really.
So on that topic, right, because Magni fulfills the role of Khadgar in this expansion. Like he fulfills the Khadgar role that Khadgar filled in Legion and WoD, for that matter, of being like the jokey dad dude who gives you the quests, basically, and who like leads you through the expansion.
Boy, when you frame it like that, I like Khadgar way more than I thought I did.
Oh, for sure. Well, Khadgar works because he is basically Paul Newman with dad jokes. Okay, so like you can forgive him being like, you can forgive him that nether shard bit where he's like, yeah, get me 2,000 nether shards. Ho ho! I only needed one. Here's 1,099 back, and you can forgive him that, because he's so beautiful, and it's so great. But Magni has got a much more annoying voice and face and existence, and you're much less forgiving of him as a result. But that it's an established role in WoW expansions now, the old dude that leads you through the expansion. And Khadgar did that before. I guess Lorewalker Cho did it to a certain degree in Mists.
Yeah, totally. No, you're
and
right on
Magni
with
is fulfilling that role in BFA. And it's already been told to us by Blizzard that Bolvar is going to very specifically fulfill that role in Shadowlands. He's going to lead us through Shadowlands and kind of. So, what do you think of that? How do you think Bolvar will fulfill that role? Do you think he's a good fit for it?
Oh, absolutely. Because we got dad jokes followed by just grating dwarf. So I am because I wanted it to be Illidan in Legion, and I didn't get that. We got to hang out with Illidan, but he didn't lead us through the expansion. So I am ready for my edgelord guide, and that's exactly what we're going to get with Bolvar.
I'm not sure how edgelord he's going to be. I think he's going to be more like a man of sorrows. I think he's going to have a lot more in common with someone like Sourfang.
So
because think about it, he's a man who has literally failed in his mission. He's like, I have failed, and you can hear his voice in the features trailer. You know, when you get that opening shot of the helm of domination like ripped in twain, and half of the helm of domination is like just sitting there, and you get his voiceover, and he's like, and his voice sounds awesome. It's like, I have failed in my mission. And so he's going to get that, and it's going to be all very sad. But also, of course, he's got a daughter that he didn't even know about, who we've met in BFA, in Talia, who I really love, who's one of my favorite characters, not because I find her an interesting character, because I don't really, but because people always refer to her in game as Tae, as in Tae, which makes it feel like it's Taliesin and Evertel's in-game character. And it's not, but I get to kid myself that Tae is the T&E insert character. So I like
Anyone
her.
refer to you guys colloquially as Tae? Because I was thinking
our first ever t-shirts that we made by public demand back in the day were t-shirts that said Tae is Bae.
Okay. I think of you as T&E, but
yeah. So anyway.
And I think of us as G&T because I just want
father-daughter dynamic thing that's going to have to happen in Shadowlands as well. So I think he's very much going to be a troubled Sourfang style man of sorrows who we're going to have to help build up his life again in a way, and like actually kind of re-enter life and society again. And I'd be surprised if he survives the expansion. My money is on him being the main character in the Sourfang style cinematics as well, because they're clearly not going to give up on those. They're brilliant.
Oh, they're so well done, and I think they must have found a pipeline that works for them, reutilizing existing models that they already have. hence why Greymane is constantly in wolf form, even when he's having a very calm conversation with Anduin at Stormwind Harbor.
But blurred out because that fur is like a bitch to animate, you know?
I really don't think that's a reason. I'm pretty sure that's simulated and it's fine. But they've got a really nice snazzy new model for Bolvar in the Shadowlands cinematic. He looks absolutely incredible. As someone who's like, Arthas is the only Lich King, Bolvar can take a hike. I think Bolvar looks incredible. I was really excited to see him in that cinematic. So yeah, he is exactly who I want to be my guide. Whether you think he's edgelord or emo, I think you're making a case for him being emo, and I think that's probably more accurate. I'm into it. Like, I just want dark, depressed. Like, I want to go through hell with Dante, I guess. Like,
yeah,
and that's what I think.
Really, that's a nice way of putting it. I like that.
I think that's exactly what we're gonna get with Bolvar. So, yeah. So, Brand's broad.
But imagine if he turned out like Magni, though.
He's not going to. He can't. There's no way.
Champion, I'll meet you back at the Chamber of the Heart. You zaps out.
Well,
Bolvar.
It'll make a little more sense. He's got some like death magic that just isn't compatible with us, whereas Magni is just being a dick, a diamond dick. Let's move on. So with that in mind, let's keep our feet on the ground and go to pop culture references.
Why did you give the dwarf a Jamaican accent then, Garrett? Why did you do that?
That's not my Jamaican accent, and you're not going to hear it because. We want to talk about bad accents in World of Warcraft.
Do you want to talk about borderline racist accents in WoW?
Yeah,
we can do that. The material is there.
How have we not brought up the Jafakin trolls? Anyways, pop culture references. There's so many of them. And when you were like, "Oh, we should talk about our favorite pop culture reference characters in World of Warcraft," and mine, I think, has been there since the beginning. I'm pretty sure this freaking dude's been running around Booty Bay since the beginning, and it's Oglethorpe Obnauticus, which is not even remotely veiled a reference to one of the greatest cartoons of all time, Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Fair.
And yeah, oh god, I remember distinctly getting to Booty Bay in vanilla. I was playing with Katie and we were both binging Aqua Teen Hunger Force. It was the first show we ever bought on DVD in seasons. We were like binging it together on Fridays. Getting to Booty Bay and being like, is that an Aqua Teen reference? And sure enough, yes it is.
That's awesome.
That's the only reason I care. I don't give a crap about the character in actual World of Warcraft. I just love that somebody on the WoW team was a big enough freaking Aqua Teen nerd and this is not even one of the more popular Aqua Teen characters. I love it. That's it. That's my story.
Awesome story. Cool story, bro. That's good. Mine's really obvious. Mine is Maximilian of Northshire as Don Quixote in the Cataclysm quests. It's really great. Basically, my criteria, I think I'm looking at like lists of pop culture references in WoW. This is clearly a subject in of itself, which we should dedicate an entire episode to in the future. Going through pop culture references in WoW, and we'll get some pictures together for the live recording on stream and stuff like that.
Got to talk about Harris Pilton.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll go through them all, every single one of them, and rate them. But I don't know. Maybe we will.
I'm having a panic attack as you utter that sentence.
You don't mind putting all that work into you. Anyway, the basic criteria for whether or not I like one of the pop culture references most of the time comes down to whether I get it or not. And if I get it, I'm usually so happy with myself. Like the Romeo and Juliet reference in the original Karazhan and stuff like that. I'm all like, oh, I get that. I get that reference. I get that reference.
You're Captain America.
I get that reference so hard. Oh, I get it so hard. And that was the thing with Maximilian of Northshire. When I was doing those quests, and he's just a great, funny character anyway, like a Monty Python-esque character. There's a bit where he literally murders a woman, and it's like hilarious. He goes up to like he wants to save damsels in distress, right? So he goes up to the top of a hill where there's a woman who's like just standing at the top of the hill, And he's like, I will rescue you from the top of this hill. And she's like, I don't need rescue. I'm just standing at the top of the hill. And he pushes her off and she dies. He murders the woman. He murders her.
Terrible.
One of the first ever videos we did on the channel was like funniest quests in WoW or whatever. And this was one of the quests in there. And that segment of the video opened up with, you know, who is the odd one out between O.J. Simpson, Durst, what's his name, Durst, and Maximilian of Northshire. And it's like, well, Durst and Simpson have been found innocent of murder in a court of law, so they definitely didn't kill anyone. Whereas Maximilian of Northshire definitely did. Here he is killing a woman.
That is a deep cut.
That's also, by the way, speaking of O.J. Simpson, that's O.J. Simpson's favorite quest in WoW as well. He loves it when you kill the woman. It's his favorite bit.
Oh, man. Oh, this got dark. It's got darker than Bolvar's journey through Shadowlands.
But listen, I can't talk because it is also my favorite quest. But not because you kill them. There's also a bit in that quest because it's a cataclysm quest. There's a bit in that quest where you mistake a male blood elf for a female. Classic, because that happens all the way throughout Cataclysm. And there's a bit where you then go and fight a dinosaur. And then the dinosaur is obviously a dinosaur, so starts chasing you. And you have to take off your armor and throw it at the dinosaur, so you're naked by the end of the fight. And it's brilliant. And all the way through, I was thinking, oh, is this Don Quixote? Is this like a really labored, long Don Quixote reference? And then at the end of the entire quest chain, you get a toy. You get a toy windmill. And of course, Don Quixote very famously imagined that windmills were dragons and would attack them as if they were dragons. Like that's, you know, and it's a very famous cultural reference to say, you know, if you're chasing windmills, you're kind of delusional or whatever, and being like Don Quixote, which is doing the character of Don Quixote a bit of a disservice. But, you know, anyway, so all the way through, I was thinking, wow, is this Don Quixote or am I reading too much into this? It's fun. Is it Don Quixote? And then when you get the windmill toy at the end, I was like, oh, I feel so clever right now. I feel so clever.
It's really
because one of the most famous works of literature in the entire world, I spotted a reference to one of the most famous ever books ever written in a video game. I'm so clever.
Right, I'm personally just really entertained by the stark contrast in our culture levels right now that you picked a Don Quixote reference and I picked an Aqua Teen reference.
Fair. Well, I like the Nazmir quest lines in the Alliance war campaign as well, which is Apocalypse Now, Heart of Darkness.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
That's really cool as well.
That's a good one.
I like stuff.
Do you have because I can't think of a pop culture reference that I find particularly egregious. Do you have one that comes to mind?
Yes.
As a yang to this yin?
Yes. I have, in my mind's eye, in my headcanon, I have a vat of acid. And next to that vat of acid is a big, like, pot of wet cement. And one day, I'm going to take Harrison Jones, and I'm going to put Harrison Jones in that vat of acid, and then I'm going to encase that vat of acid in cement, and then I'm going to dump it in the North Sea. Because I hate Harrison Jones. That character can just get out. I hate him so much.
He's not great.
Because I feel like he's one of those really cheap ones. He's one of those really cheap cultural references. Like they've barely even changed the name. And I kind of like the more on the nose ones, really obvious ones, like the Star Wars things. I like how they give guards in Stormwind and Orgrimmar lightsabers every time there's a new Star Wars movie that comes out or something. I think that's kind of cute. But Harrison Jones was not funny anyway. But then he's like one of the main characters in the expansion. And you have to go on like a really obnoxiously long quest chain with him, which is quite fun. with like the Nazi goblins. There are Nazi German accented goblins in that, which is quite fun.
Yeah,
quite fun. That's quite fun.
Rather
but
enjoyed that quest
Jones
line.
is just, it feels so lazy. It's like, you know, the Scary Movie franchise, right?
All 23 films, yes.
Yeah, the Scary Movie franchise is like what I like to describe as jokes by association. So what they'll do in the Scary Movie franchise is they won't do a joke, but suddenly they'll literally reenact a famous advert. And they won't undermine it or change it. They won't kind of like do it knowingly and like do it for a reason. They're literally just reenacting an advert and not adding anything to it. And that's supposed to be a joke. And you're like, this is not a joke. You've just reenacted an advert. You haven't made it funny. You haven't done it for a funny reason. You've just reenacted a joke, and I'm supposed to know that that's funny. Like, it's comedy by association, and that's exactly what Harrison Jones is. Like, I'm supposed to find him entertaining just because he is, you know, a really obvious Indiana Jones thing. And
I guess for me, this is very similar to my feelings about like why I couldn't hone in on a single warlord from WoD, because they all were just left me feeling nothing really. And that's kind of Harrison Jones. It's like it doesn't irritate me because it doesn't leave an impression.
Yeah. It irritates me greatly.
But you know, as like the resident Hearthstone fan, like we have a million more archaeologists that are infinitely more interesting now, thanks to the League of Explorers being really fleshed out. And Bran is one of them, but definitely the most forgettable of them. But Reno Jackson is basically just Harrison Jones done right, in an interesting, like, well-developed character fashion that is funny in his own right because that character is funny and not because the character is an Indiana Jones reference.
I agree with that.
So, and also turned out to be a dragon.
Happens, man. I just hate that.
Just hate that when you find out, oh shit, I'm a dragon. so inconvenient. I think that's fair. And then finally, we're gonna bring it home, Taliesin, with our own toons. Do you have a favorite character that is your character?
Well, I mean, it would feel really wrong to talk about the characters of World of Warcraft without a little bit of time talking about our own characters, and characters that we've played in the game, since they've done everything. You know, my main in World of Warcraft has killed every baddie there is with the slightest provocation. Like, just because I was told to, I did it, and got the fat loots. You know, I'm a hero of Azeroth. I'm a champion of Azeroth. And obviously my main is my absolute kind of favorite character in WoW. Like a main who has been recreated and followed me across multiple different accounts and regions in World of Warcraft as well. So my favorite of my characters, I have many because I've got like 20 120s at the moment on my account. But my favorite is Mavamwi, who has been my go-to priest character forever. And it's so weird, isn't it? Because I would love to race change Mavamwi because humans are boring. If I had the choice, you know, if it was just purely from what I would want as a main, and I was playing priest as my main, I would change Mavamwi to a female Forsaken like yesterday, because they're so cool. They've got awesome animations and they just look great and they work so well as priests. They're fantastic.
Well, it's a shame that according to the Q&A at BlizzCon, and according to, you know, Hazakostas, that will just never happen, because it just wouldn't make sense for the Horde and Alliance to team up despite every story ever told in the history of Warcraft.
Yeah. But I've got such like an emotional connection to my all-time main that I couldn't do it. I could never change it. I was really hoping that they were going to give us the normal human models as an option for Kultiris humans. So it wouldn't just be the awesome Kultiris human models. Like in Borealis, you could also have normal human models, so that I could then make Mavamwi a Kultiris human, but wouldn't have to change how she looked. Because if I had to change how she looked, it wouldn't work. She has to be who she is. She has to look the same. But if I could have made her Kultiran, that would have been amazing. That would have been like the perfect character then from an RP point of view, because I love Kultiris. It like speaks to me in a very kind of emotional, like religious way, really. So in my mind, she wears her Kultiris tabard a lot, and she is like an honorary Kultiran, and she hangs out like Jaina's gaff, like all the time, or playing in the maze or whatever. She loves it there. And it's really cheap because she's my long-term main, but she's what I've done everything on the game with, and I everything that I can do in the game on a character, I will try and do with her first if I can.
You know, your headcanon should just be that she is Cold Terran, but she was raised in Stormwind, so she has a Stormwind accent.
Nice. I like that very much.
That's your headcanon. Yeah, mine is my first main as well. Only sadly, actually, honestly, like the first two that jumped to my mind are characters I don't play anymore. But like I still have a very, like, it's my Night Elf Hunter, because it was just such a, I just have so much like wrapped up in that character. It's so much so that like it affected me when the War of Thorns hit the game, and Darnassus and Teldrassil's burned, like just like, oh crap, I didn't realize I still had such an attachment to the Night Elves, even though I was maining Horde at the time, and had been for many years. So yeah, I just think about, I still, like, you think about when I start talking about World of Warcraft in a more casual, like in real life thing, and we're talking about characters and our own experiences, I still think of myself as the Night Elf Hunter, and I still think of like my tiger from Winterspring that I named Vader because I'm not a unique human being. And I just think about everything that came with that, and it's, yeah, that's it. That's my favorite character is my Night Elf Hunter that I don't play anymore because I'd rather tank. But
people are bringing up Tuskarr in the chat, and it's a well-known fact that I love Tuskarr and they're my favorite race in the game because they're the most perfectly round race in the game, and I've got a thing for things which are perfectly round. I just love perfectly round things, and that's why I love my hippo mount. That's why I love the pig mount. And if I could race change to Tuskarr, if they ever introduced Tuskarr as a playable race, I would literally race change every single character that I have, and like I say, I've got many, to Tuskarr the day that I could, except Mavamwi, because I wouldn't be able to do it. Like, much as I'd want to, and much as I want my main to be a Tuskarr character, I couldn't do it. I could never race change her because it's too important. It's too important to kind of keep that through line for me. You know, it would be like just burning everything that came before if I race changed Mavamwi. Like, occasionally I can change her hairstyle.
I would be back to Night Elf.
I feel bad even when I do that.
I would be back to Night Elf, and I would never return if they could be paladins.
I've toyed with the idea of changing Mavamwi's face to being like one notch older every expansion.
I have a human paladin I did that with.
You get to being very old much quicker than you expect.
Yes.
There's not that many options.
Yeah, and then at some point...
maybe with the new customization options.
And then at some point that character decides they want plastic surgery.
Do you know what? I'd love to make... Like, when those new customization options come in Shadowlands, you are going to see so many hot Asian females running around Goldshire and Elwyn and Stormwind. Like, number one, if it didn't ruin my headcanon, day one, Mavamwi would be a hot Asian girl. That's just how it's going to happen. You're going to see so many of them. So many of them. And I think that's great. Wonderful. And again, if I wasn't tied to the headcanon of my main, I would do that too. It'd be brilliant. Because those models look incredible. Those new human customization options in Shadowlands, I mean, they're 15 years too late, but they're brilliant. They're
new
really
troll
good.
models. This new troll customization looks really cool as well. And I'm also oddly excited about covering up my bones as Forsaken.
Yeah, and they just got cool hairstyles. That's the new. That's gonna be the next T&E video. In fact, is the new customizations that we want to see. Because there's because the fact that Wildhammer dwarves are in there means that those customizations go above and beyond just kind of more options for the lore specific races that you are. Because the reason they never had Wildhammer dwarves in there before was because lore-wise, it just doesn't match up. You are very specifically, when you choose a dwarf character, you are very specifically a Bronzebeard. Like, you're one of those. You're one of those dwarves. You're not a Wildhammer dwarf. And when you choose a human, you are very specifically a human from Elwyn Forest. You're not a human from anywhere else. And that seems to be kind of, I think, because they're potentially getting rid of starting zones in Shadowlands as well. With the new leveling system, you have that like island that you start on, so everyone has like a basic starting experience that they can do, so you're not tied to the starting zone lore anymore. So you don't have to be a dark spear troll, you don't have to be an Elwyn Forest human, you don't have to be like an Ironforged dwarf, and that gives you more opportunity to kind of change the actual lore behind the characters, and that gives you so many more customization options as well. So I think we'll see some like wildcard things in there. I think we'll see Forsaken undead elves.
I was about to say that was exactly where I was going to go. I cannot believe that we're going to make it out of this expansion without additional undead.
Yeah.
Like, hell,
I think we'll see different races of undead.
Take the Death Knight treatment. Just give them a slightly different skin tint and glowing eyes, and
I think we'll see Dark Rangers. I think all of these things will come under the new customization options, partly because Blizzard aren't idiots and they know that is one of the most visual kind of, it's one of the reasons I'm going to make a video of it, because it's like the kind of thing people really like to talk about and imagine, and you know,
we're all edgelords at the end of the day. We all want to be creepy, spooky, awesome.
What customization, if you could add any customization to any race, what would you do? And I'm not just getting you to write my video for me now.
Any customization to any race.
Mine would be the undead elves. I love that. I would also
if I can just add a race. Yeah, no, Dark Ranger I've been wanting it since the first time I saw a Dark Ranger in game.
I would also like to see, because of course Worgen are going to be freed from their Gilneas starting experience now. So there's no reason why we can't have Night Elf Worgen. There's no reason why we can't have Night Elf Worgen now either.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Would be really cool. And like, what difference does it really make? You could, like, the wolf model would look a bit different, and
they already have really long ears.
Human, you turn into an elf. Yeah, it'd be brilliant. It'd be brilliant. And there's no reason why you can't have that if you're taking away the Gilnean starting experience, which you are if you've got the new non-specific starting experience. And you could make it for those kind of customizations. You could make it so you have to go through the starting experience island rather than the Gilnean starting experience, and it could totally make sense.
Can I just make Paladin Night Elves? Is that a thing? I just want to be a Night Elf.
That's slightly different. You're doing something you're going off piste a little bit there.
Just make my consecration look like moon glow effect instead of sun, and we're good. We figured it out. That's all you got to do.
Do you have a character in your list of playable characters who is your least favorite in your time playing this game?
Yes,
one that you hated.
Yeah, my Death Knight, because they ruined the way you play Death Knights. If you want to be Frostback, they absolutely ruined it. It's crap. I've never had less fun piloting a DPS spec than I did when they made Breath of Sindragosa the way to maximize your DPS as a Frost DK.
Yeah,
they made me hate my favorite thing in World of Warcraft, which is Death Knights.
I'm sorry, dude.
Yeah.
My least favorite character that I have is also a Death Knight, but for a completely different reason. It's because I've got a Death Knight, and of all my characters, it's one of my oldest characters that I have on my current account. And it is the character that I spent the most money on, because I've never been able to settle on like a race for it. I've never had. It was a human for a long time. And I think, male humans are amongst the best looking plate wearers in the game. But my warrior was a male human. So I decided to change him from that. And then he was an orc, but I got a bit bored of that. And then he's gone through so many different race changes and name changes. And I've kind of now settled on I was undead for a long time. Then I was Tauren because they're so big and cool. And now I've kind of settled on a Draenei, a male Draenei, because they're so beefy looking. It's quite satisfying. But I don't know. I keep changing them, and as a result, that Death Knight has never really felt like my character. So that's the one I hate.
I mean, I am just one of the most downtrodden players of World of Warcraft ever, because I survived the war against Paladins that was Ghostcrawler's existence, and then they ruined Death Knights. So, just just kidding. I love you, Ghostcrawler. I miss you.
And who's your favorite person at Blizzard?
They're all gone. They are all gone and working at Second Dinner now. No, that's not true. Right
now, it was a joke question. Please don't answer it.
I won't. Do you have a least favorite WoW toon?
Yeah, that's it. That's my Death Knight.
Oh, that was your Death Knight. Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
So we both, our answer is Death Knight. Our combined answer is Death Knight.
I feel like he's like, you know, when you watch a long-running series, you know, in like a soap opera, a sitcom or whatever, where they change the actor for a character but keep the character, and it just doesn't work at all. And you're like, why have you changed the actor for this character? Like, it's so annoying. That's what my Death Knight feels like.
Your Death Knight is Doctor Who?
No. The Doctor Who's fine because that's like part of the lore. But like in Roseanne or something, where they change just the actor that plays the character but never mention it.
Okay, so
and
you're talking
is played by a different actor, not like Doctor Who.
Yeah, you're talking about more like 2.5 Men.
Yeah. Oh no, 2.5 Men. They changed the character. That was fine. Like,
but the character was inhabiting the exact same.
Talking about when the character is the same, but they just changed the actor. I hate that. I hate that shit.
Dark Knight. They changed out. Maggie Gyllenhaal came in for.
Yes.
Katie Holmes.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, Maggie Gyllenhaal was in it first, wasn't she?
No, she was in it second. Remember. She was in it second.
I can't remember.
Yeah, she was in Dark Knight. Yeah. No, totally. Yes, you were absolutely.
I hate that. I hate it when they do that. It's less like egregious with the Batman movies because you kind of like, you know, they're different movies, I suppose. It's more like in a TV show. It's when they do it in a TV show that it really bugs me. It really, really gets on my wick. I don't know. I don't like it. Yeah, they do it in Game of Thrones as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they've done. There's a lot of characters that have done that with. Although I guess Dario, as Callus Custody brings up in the chat room, is probably the most egregious example. But the Mountain changed like 4 times. It's just that the Mountain was such a barely there character for the first few seasons. You didn't really notice.
Yeah.
But Dario was just like, wow, you didn't even try to make him look the same. Not even.
No, and like there's no kind of similarity between the even the performances, let alone the actors.
Which frankly I'm kind of happy with because the OG Dario was just like, I don't know, he's a character off the cover of a romance novel. Let's go with that. And then
I kind of liked him. I know someone who knows him in real life because you know I'm involved in acting circles in the UK, which is quite a small circle really. And I know someone who knows him, and he just didn't want to be in other seasons. I always assumed he was sacked for being a bit rubbish because he was. Sorry if you're watching, dude. But he didn't. He just decided not to be in it anymore, which is really weird. He wanted to be like a rock star or something. So he was like in a band that he wanted to focus on.
Well, that's oh God, who's the actor? That's he was the villain in the first Deadpool. He does all sorts of other stuff.
Oh, really?
The guy who was Dario, wasn't
Auntie
he?
Viv in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is another good example. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm blanking on that actor's name. But whatever. IMDb is failing me as well. So, oh, wonderful. Well, this is fun. This is a fun little chat. And I'd like to remind everybody that we do have an email, and we will be doing monthly mailbag episodes. So you can write into wowkillercast@gmail.com with your follow-ups to this. Keep them short, though. It can't be 90 minutes.
No, make them as long as you want. I don't care. Let's not pretend that we try and keep this show like, you know, efficient and tight. Garrett's very insistent, guys. You need to make your questions short and to the point.
You don't understand
the theme of this show.
You don't understand.
No going off topic. No rambling. Keep it tight.
I didn't say keep it on topic. I just said don't send me 4 paragraphs. I'm not going to put that on the show.
Keep your questions very short, and also don't talk over Garrett at all. Okay, don't do. And say less. No ums. No ums.
No ums. Yeah, that's good luck with that one. But yes, write in wowkillercast@gmail.com. If you'd rather consume this in a video format, you can find us over at youtube.com/wowkiller. And you can also, wowkillercast, other than the YouTube, that's also the Twitter. So you can follow us on Twitter at wowkillercast. So before we wrap this up, Taliesin, if folks are somehow unaware of where to find you around the web, where can you be found when you're not doing this podcast?
Me and my pregnant wife, who soon won't be pregnant anymore. It will be a matter of days or at the most weeks before she's no longer pregnant, which will be a relief to her, I'm sure, and to me. You can find us at Taliesin and Evertel. So find us on YouTube. You can find us on Twitch. You can find us on Twitter. Find us on those 3 places and nowhere else. If you get an email from us on a different platform, it's a fake. It's not us. Only YouTube and Twitter and Twitch. Fact.
Wonderful. I'm Garrett Art on Twitter.
What about you? Where can we find you, Garrett?
And amove.tv.
Just tell us. Just tell us. Why are you? Just tell us.
And all of the other podcasts that I do. I would highly recommend you go and subscribe to a podcast called The Angry Chicken. It's about Hearthstone. I can't think of why I would be pushing that show over others right now.
The Hearthstone show?
Yeah, I definitely don't have any inside information about things that are coming to it that would make me excited and want you, fine listeners, to go and get hyped for Hearthstone. But
I was hoping to talk to you about Hearthstone last week, but we had to cancel the show because you weren't available.
Yeah,
weirdly.
I just had to go to Orange County, California for a thing. I went out for one day just to enjoy myself.
Really weird.
Yeah.
Really weird. And now you're talking about Hearthstone like it's something.
Mm-hmm.
Odd. Very odd.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. I wish I knew, but of course we only ever talk to each other live on this show, so I don't know anything else that anyone else doesn't know.
No. And if I did tell you something, that would be a breach of an NDA, so I definitely wouldn't do that.
Well, exactly, and I wouldn't want to get you in trouble.
No.
Don't want to get you in trouble with the NBA.
This is a bit, everybody. This is very much a bit. Anyways, go subscribe to The Angry Chicken. Lots to talk about coming very, very soon. And it's going to wrap it up for this show. So we will see you in a week's time. But until then, everybody, good luck, have fun, and keep your feet on the ground.
Oh, you tease.
That's a show.